you have no idea how happy I am. First video I've made in months, and it's about a Warhammer 40,000 game. Now, anybody who follows me on Twitter or talks to me on Discord probably knows that I love Warhammer, be it 40k, fantasy, hell, even Age of Sigmar is starting to grow on me. However, despite my love of the grim darkness of the far future, I have yet to make a single video about a game in the setting. I think it's time to rectify that with a video on Warhammer 40,000 Boltgun. I will not be going into spoilers beyond some gameplay ones, but I will mention some aspects of the lore when I feel it is relevant. So without further ado, I am the Knight of Fantasy, and I'd like to welcome you to my realm.
Death is the reward for heresy!
Because this is a review and not a lore video, I'm going to assume you have some basic knowledge of Warhammer 40,000 lore. Basically, it's a space fantasy universe that merges science fiction aspects like guns, tanks, and space with demons the size of apartment buildings and orcs who spread via spores. There are no real good guys, everybody is some different flavor of dickhead, you get the idea. Being that Warhammer 40k has been popular since the 1980s, a wide range of video games have been released for it, namely on computer, but some console, mobile, and even handheld games have been made with varying degrees of quality. In the same way that IBS has varying degrees of diarrhea. I also assume if you know anything about Warhammer, you also know that the vast majority of video games are very bad, especially shooters. The most infamous example being Fire Warrior, which is a dog shit Halo clone that is extremely difficult to get running on modern hardware, assuming you'd actually want to run it. Space Hulk Deathwing, which is arguably worse because it's actually close to being good, so painfully close to being good, but falls down just enough to make it not worth recommending. Necromunda Hired Gun, which is living proof that the words fun and bad are not mutually exclusive, and the recently released Darktide, which, look, I'm trying to be happy that I'm making videos again. Let's not go any further and ruin it. My point is, despite the setting being perfect for one, there has not been a good 40k FPS that didn't need a Warlord-size asterisk next to it. So is Boltgun the exception to the rule in this case? Oh, by Hashut, yes, yes, a million times yes. Not only does this game shock me with its quality, it also shocks me in the fact that it's the first officially licensed boomer shooter set in the 40k universe. I'd have at least thought that there would have been at least one in the 90s, but no. And again, I said official, just in case someone brings up some Doom wad that I don't know about. Since this is a boomer shooter, the story does not amount to much, but I will touch on it briefly. The game takes place several years after the events of Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine, released in 2011, where a massive orc invasion as well as a chaos incursion took place on the Forge world of Graia. In that game, the forces of chaos were initially defeated, but due to the negligence of a rogue group of tech priests, the forces of chaos pour into the world, and it's up to an elite squad of Space Marines known as the Guard veterans to put a stop to it. Dropping onto the planet, all but one of the Space Marines die in the crash. This sole survivor is named Malam Kaido, a member of the Ultramarines Space Marine chapter. Space Marines, being the most iconic aspect of 40k, are the elite super soldiers created by the God Emperor of Mankind, fighting in the name of him and his Imperium of Man. This is a massive oversimplification, but for the sake of time, that is where I will leave it. Basically, the story is you're Doom guy on enough steroids to put down a bull elephant and wearing an RV's worth of power armor sent to rid an entire planet of cultists, demons, and traitorous space marines, all in the thrall of the dark gods of chaos. Now for the presentation, this game looks absolutely beautiful. It feels like a lot of retro-inspired games use said inspiration as an excuse and crutch to skimp out on making sure their games and sprites look good and sound good. And thank the Emperor, that is not the case here. Like, at all. The game has some very colorful and detailed sprites, be they enemies, weapons, or both. The 3D objects, though they do look old, still have a respectable amount of detail. The one good thing you could say about all previous 40k FPS games is that they show off the massive scale and oppressive atmosphere of 40k. Even Fire Warrior and especially Deathwing are famous for that, and this game is no exception. I will say the only problem I have with the visuals is that the levels do become very homogeneous within themselves compared to the rest of the level, and it can be very easy to get lost in them. Something I am always picky about in shooters, especially 40k shooters, is the sound design. You wanna know why? The name Boltgun is in reference to the titular weapon, also known as the bolter. It may look like an assault rifle with a heart condition, but it fires explosive rounds the size of clay bricks. So I think it's fair to expect them to sound meaty and... well, I think the game speaks for itself. Of course, other weapons sound really good too. The shotgun in particular has the sounds of shell casings hitting the floor, and honestly, that is a bit of a nice touch. And of course, the heavy bolter makes me happy in ways that I don't quite understand. The voice of Kaido also being used to taunt his foes is honestly very fun, and there is quite a lot of really good lines here.
None can stand against our hatred.
Truly, an exemplary son of Macragge. The music is fine. It's very fine music. Nothing I really noticed, but nothing bad either. Lots of heavy metal riffs, which you'd think I'd be over the moon about, but none of them really stand out to me. The main menu music is very good, and I like it, but as far as the game is concerned, I can't pick out a single discernible track that excites me. You're not getting any rip and tear or BFG division, is what I'm saying. Performance-wise, this game is deceptively demanding. It usually runs really well, but on certain levels, performance can chug, especially in Chapter 3, where there is a lot of falling magma. I'm running a 2-year-old gaming laptop with a 3050 Ti, not an ideal setup, but no slouch, and on occasion this game becomes choppy. However, most of the time I'm sitting at a nice and crispy 120 frames per second, with a comparable frame rate on Steam Deck. There was more stuttering on the deck, but only at the start. Honestly, if you use the Steam Deck as your daily driver, that version of the game works really well with the controller, and if you're like me and prefer the mouse and keyboard, you can also hook those up as well. At a glance, this game looks, sounds, and runs very well, and it does a great job of exemplifying both the grim darkness of the far future, as well as the severe power trip you can develop as the Emperor's rage fills your heart and you slaughter his enemies. Gameplay-wise, Boltgun is an absolute gem. Being a boomer shooter, you know what to expect here. Lots of explosions and gore, lots of secret areas to get more ammo, and a wide assortment of guns. On the topic of guns, you have a very nice variety of hardware to cleanse, purge, and kill with impunity. From the iconic and titular Boltgun, to the boner-inducing heavy bolter, to the honestly underrepresented shotgun in 40k games for Space Marines, to the personal favorites like the Meltagun. The bolter itself has access to 3 round types, being the Vengeance, Dragonfire, and Kraken rounds, which can be found in secret areas throughout the levels. There are also 3 types of grenades, with frags, cracks, and vortex grenades respectively. The enemies range from different types of cultists to Space Marines of the normal, Terminator, and aspiring champions varieties, and a wide assortment of demons of the Chaos Gods Nurgle and his hated rival Tzeentch. While a part of me is bummed to see yet another game with a lot of gonorrhea grandpa plastered all over it, as was the case in Vermintide, Darktide, and Chaos Gate Demon Hunters, at least it's balanced out with a healthy dose of Tzeentchian representation. A good amount of both gods' rosters are on display here, with Diarrhea Santa Claus bringing smaller creatures such as Nurglings, Plague Toads, and Bloat Drones, while Tzeentch brought in his blue horrors, pink horrors, flamers, and screamers. Both also have greater demons in the form of a Lord of Change for Tzeentch, and Nurgle's Great Unclean One, so your average Warhammer player feels represented here. A nice bonus is they brought in another enemy type known as the Ambull, which is a type of Xenos that can be found throughout the planet of Graia. Both enemies and weapons have a strength rating. match or exceed the strength rating of the enemy with the rating of your gun to do more damage, while upgrading said strength rating with the machine spirit upgrades that you can find throughout the game within secret areas. You also have a melee weapon in the form of the chainsword. Really, this is best used against lightly armored enemies such as cultists and lesser demons such as nurglings, as using them against chaos marines, greater demons, or the amble is a recipe for getting stabbed if you linger too long. However, you might want to use the chainsword on both the pink horrors and aspiring champions, as if you do not blow up the corpse of the pink horrors, it causes 2 blue horrors to spawn from it, and the aspiring champion becomes blessed by the ruinous powers and turns into a stronger chosen champion. A few bolter rounds will blow them up, but if you want to save ammo, it may be prudent to kill them with a chainsword. Just remember to rapidly press the key you have it mapped to for a longer attack. I do think it would be cool to have a wider variety of melee weapons, such as the power axe to use against chaos marines, a power sword to use against demons, or a thunder hammer to use against greater demons, but since you are playing as a Stern Guard veteran, which are more focused almost exclusively on ranged fire, it makes sense. Fighting normal enemies is fun, whether you're slicing through cultists with a chainsword, slaughtering traitor marines with a heavy bolter, or atomizing demons with a Volkite weapon. However, it's time to address the ancient amble in the room. This game does not do bosses well at all. Bosses in this game are at best tedious slogs and at worst frustrating annoyances, whether it be the Lord of Change's bullshit purple flame that he uses with no telegraphing whatsoever, the sorcerer's equally bullshit insta-beams that are very difficult to dodge, or the great unclean one spawning enough nurglings to clog an artery. These fights absolutely suck. There's no way around it. In my Infernax video a long time ago, I complained that the bosses were not really anything. But in this game, the bosses truly damaged the experience for me. Not to an unforgivable degree, as I'll get into, but enough to irritate me. See, I have seen people complain about the fact that normal enemies such as Chaos Marines, Chaos Terminators, and aspiring champions are all bullet sponges. I understand, but disagree with this critique because, like you, Chaos Marines are wearing enough metal on them to be on one of my Spotify playlists, especially Terminators. Another critique is that it's very easy to get swarmed by a mixture of demons and bullets, forcing you to find specific spots in the map and hold them down defensively. My response to that is you're playing as an Ultramarine, perhaps the most professional of all the Space Marine chapters, led by one of the only Primarchs who actually uses tactics, Robute Gilliman. And I think Papa Smurf would be happy to see one of his Gene Sons actually using tactics. However, my disagreement for both of these critiques evaporates when facing these bosses because these fights are not tactical and they're not justifiable. Okay, a great unclean one being able to take an entire armory's worth of heavy bolter rounds I can get, because Nurgle is supposed to be the faction of attrition warfare, outlasting their enemies with a massive health pool and in some cases regeneration. However, why is a scrawny ass bird brain Wedgiemancer like a fucking Lord of Change able to take entire Volkite beams and several hits from plasma weapons and still be over half health? Yeah, Tzeentch gives his followers barriers, but I'd rather that be represented with a blue bar that you have to get through to get to the squishy bits, and having to find a way to cheese a boss by having their beep boop AI get stuck on obstacles so you can take pot shots is not tactical. It's lame. And the reason you do it is these high damage instant attacks feel more like gambling, which is something you do not want from a shooter, especially a boomer shooter. This can be mitigated by using a vortex grenade in the fight, which will take their health down to half, but 1, these can only be found in secret areas, and 2, if you're going through this the first time, you might not think to save them. I know plenty of people who use every piece of ordnance they get the minute they find it in a boomer shooter, which I guess to use my own point against me, G-Man probably wouldn't approve, but still. So yeah, I lied earlier in the video when I said there was no asterisk to liking this game. However, unlike Necromunda being a janky yet fun game that's held together by tape, spit, and a prayer, and Darktide being a fundamentally good game with everything around it being ass, Boltgun being a very meaty shooter that just so happens to have awful boss fights is far more tolerable. I mean, if Halo 2 can be so well regarded despite the garbage boss fights in that game, and Looking Glass have absolutely nothing boss fights despite being PC gaming royalty, I think the fun Space Marine FPS can get a pass here. I think this game has an excellent foundation that's just waiting for a banger sequel, and if any DLC comes out for it, I'd be happy to play it. I also look forward to trying out some mods too when those eventually come out. For now, I'm going back to purge the unclean. And if you like this video, feel free to give it a like and to subscribe to my channel, where I will be posting more reviews, and if you want to follow me on social media, my link tree will be in the description below. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Bye!